What has happened to morality in the world? This chant at a music festival over in the UK should worry everyone.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF! 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 Death, death to the IDF!
Yeah, that was over at Glastonbury, and it's clear that values across the world have frayed. This is a sheer disgrace when people are openly chanting for death and violence. And after being broadcast live on the BBC, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is demanding answers, saying there is no excuse for this kind of appalling hate speech. I said that kneecap should not be given a platform, and that goes for any other performers making threats or inciting violence. The BBC needs to explain how these scenes came to be broadcast. Joining me now is Brendan O'Neill, Spiked Online Chief Political Reporter. Brendan, thank you so much for joining me. Let's start, of course, with the scenes at Glastonbury. How would you describe what happened over the weekend?
Disgusting, racist, horrible, the kind of thing we haven't seen here in Britain since the 1930s. And I'm not exaggerating, because what we had here was a mob of largely well-educated, privileged young people in an audience crying for the death of Jewish soldiers. Let's be honest about this. You know, when you say death to the IDF, you are saying death to Jews. Firstly, because the IDF is predominantly a Jewish army. And secondly, because everyone knows that the IDF is the force that protects the Jewish homeland from the armies of anti-Semites on its borders. So when you have this mob of young privileged Brits crying for the death of the IDF, they're essentially saying death to Israel, death to the Jewish homeland, death to the Jewish people in the Middle East. It was disgusting. These people are the heirs to Oswald Mosley and the British Union of Fascists, not to the traditions of anti-imperialism.
Yeah, well said. And I've got to ask, you know, where does this say as to where we are at in the world culturally, when, you know, people are meant to be going to these music festivals to listen to music, and yet they're chanting and inciting violence? What does it say about morality in the world and where we are culturally?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It really raises huge questions about where we're at as a West, you know, the Anglo-American world. What's going on here? And I think since the 7th of October pogrom, which is almost 2 years ago now, when Hamas, a 6,000-strong army of Islamo-fascists invaded Israel and raped and murdered Jews, since then, we have really seen the rot of the West rise to the surface. We've seen all the backward regressive trends in our own societies come to the surface. We've seen young people siding with Hamas, essentially, taking the side of the pogromists against their victims. We've seen people raging against Israel in a way that is often very bigoted. Every weekend on the streets of Sydney, London, New York. You know, this is a battle between civilization and barbarism, between the democracy of Israel and the barbarism of Hamas. And the horrible fact is that lots of young people in our own societies have taken the wrong side, and that should really worry us.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very, very concerning. And it's, you know, not just in the UK, I think, you know, in Australia and other parts of the world as well. There have also been some suggestions that this is an example of why more people are turning to Reform, and Reform UK is on the rise. Nigel Farage's party does appear to be making major inroads and is ahead in some key areas. Brendan, do you agree with this? And do you realistically think that it's a possibility that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister?
You know, if you'd asked me that a few weeks back, I would have said no. He's a good politician. He's a transformative politician in the sense that he brought about Brexit. He campaigned for Brexit for years and years. He changed this country. But I would have said no way could he be Prime Minister, because it's difficult to break through in Britain, because we've had a two-party system for 100 years, more than 100 years, and this country is either ruled by the Conservatives or Labour. But that is changing. And the polls are extraordinary. The polls are showing that it is possible that Nigel Farage's party, Reform, will get the most seats at the next general election. That would be unprecedented in this country for more than 100 years, which is when Labour first came around and kind of shook things up. to me, it's not surprising at all. The Labour Party was traditionally the party of the working class, but it has stabbed the working classes in the back. It now looks down its nose at them as obese, stupid, racist idiots who need to be controlled and managed and censored. That's how Labour now looks at working class voters. So it's not surprising to me at all that in all these working class areas, they're looking for a new voice. They're looking for a new party, and they're landing on reform, which they think treats them with a little bit more respect. So politics here is being shaken up, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Labor Party's been seen in Australia straying away from that traditional working class base, and people are looking for genuine alternatives. So it's fascinating to watch reform do so well, even from the other side of the world.